So hey man, thanks and welcome to Silicon Heartland Sessions. This is part of what really makes our community so special. There are other great leaders in our IT community like you. So today for the audience and for the folks that are listening, I'm talking with Matt Randle, and Matt is the director of software engineering, infrastructure, and platform engineering at Path Robotics. And thanks for joining me. And I really appreciate you taking the time today, my friend. We have a lot to discuss, so I'm excited to jump into it. So
Same, yeah.
yeah. So we met last year. I think we met through. I don't know that we knew each other prior to Cloud Nirvana.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So you came and spoke at a Cloud Nirvana conference last year with Lori Doon. You were working at OCLC, and you guys talked about FinOps, and it was really, really well attended. So great job to you, man, and thanks for doing it.
Thank you. Yeah, we had the fun topic of what happens if you don't quite get it right. Yeah. So
there you go, man. So there's obviously you've got your own journey and everything that took you to where you are today, including obviously the Cloud Nirvana participation and so forth. So I'm really interested to hear from you. Kind of, what was your journey, and how did you come into IT, and what's your story, man?
Sure. Let's see if I can kind of keep it as tight as possible. So I started my IT journey in accounting. That sounds great and fun, and everybody's probably, yay, wow, numbers. I coming up through high school, I wanted to be an accountant. I was locked in on that. I started working at Meyer, of all places. At the time, they had a systems team. I had a gentleman who saw that I was just running around and doing all sorts of stuff, and he's like, "Do you want to learn how to do the systems at Meyer? Like reset the point of sales terminals. They were dumb terminals at the time, just converting over to a Windows operating system." And I'm like, heck yeah, I'll learn it. That's really what got me started. I grew up in a very humble home. My father was a Columbus police officer. My mom was a teacher in Westerville. And so I didn't have a lot of computer background. So that's how I learned, and started working through that in high school as I started to put myself through college at Columbus State, and then started moving up. So I did help desk jobs at what is now PNC Bank. It was National City at the time. I worked weekend overnights as an ops person at a company called Sterling Commerce. That was IBM. That's because I knew the mainframe. Nobody else knew the mainframe at my age.
I remember Sterling.
So I was the mainframe guy running tape jobs, doing all that kind of fun stuff, and then progressed. It was really at Sterling that I cut my teeth. I became a Windows admin, a Linux admin, a VMware admin, and then started moving up in the ranks. So went from that to architecture to leading into a role in pre-sales at VMware. So I was a pre-sales architect, engineer, and then leadership at VMware for a number of years. Did the same thing at Google for a bit. OCLC as an executive director of infrastructure, which was a fantastic gig. And then ended up at Path Robotics. I had a friend that went there. Path Robotics is an amazing startup focused on autonomous welding robots and AI. I thought that's kind of a cool world to play in, right? We're all starting to get into that world. So software director, pseudo engineer and platform, because the engineering or the infrastructure side, it's a party of one, which is me and a contractor right now. And then I do have a great platform team that helps us out with all of our tooling and DevOps.
That's excellent, man. So when you started out, back when you were at Meyer and you got into computers and so forth, what decade are we talking here? Are we talking back in the 90s?
90s, yeah, mid 90s. Yep.
Yeah, those were really, really fun times.
Yeah, it was. It was a great. It was an interesting world, right? Everybody was going from kind of mainframe, dumb terminals, those type of things, into this client server architecture. Nobody quite knew what it was going to be yet. Windows was still just becoming a thing as far as in the desktops and in your homes. And I just latched on, and I was lucky enough to have people that gave me opportunity, allowed me to fail, and learn and grow. And that not only shaped me as an engineer and an architect, it shaped me as a leader, right? I knew that, going into leadership roles, there are people out there that have that same ambition, that drive, and you just got to give them some space sometimes, and let them go and let them learn. And so that's how I got to be where I'm at in almost every role. And that's what I look for in my team when I build a good team.
That's excellent. So the interesting thing that really just that I find inspiring is the circuitous route that you've taken to get to where you're at right now. Back in the 90s when you started, the internet was brand new. You mentioned
Yeah.
Windows and everything. You were trying to transition from mainframe to client server and so forth. We hadn't quite got to where we are today. And now it's just a whole new world,
Yeah.
and there's lots of people in the community, I think, that would find inspiration in hearing in hearing this story and sort of walking in your footsteps and thinking, how do you go from being, an accountant? By the way, that does surprise me. I mean, on the one hand, I can understand how somebody who's drawn into technology would have a mathematical mind. I mean, like, do you enjoy math as well?
Yeah, I do. But,
Yeah.
it was, I don't know. I grew up, again, I didn't have a lot of opportunities to think, what else could there be? I knew I love my father. I love what he does. My brother is actually a Franklin County deputy, but I
Oh.
knew right away I'm not the cop type. I don't like confrontation like that, right? And so I
So go
learned a
into
lot from them.
accounting, man. Yeah, heck
Yeah,
yeah.
so accounting seems safe, right? Like nobody's going to come in and shoot at you or try to,
Yeah.
hit you upside the head one day.
Yeah.
So it was a lot easier for me, and I just like numbers, and I liked the idea of how to handle money and think of things, and I thought that was my gig. I really did, until I got introduced, like I said, through the best way of saying it is coworkers that saw something, I guess.
Yeah.
And I was the youngest that was in the systems department at Meyer. There was nobody else because way back in the day at Meyer, there were red vest and gray vest. And red vest meant you were union, and gray vest meant you were management. You were somebody. Ooh.
Wow.
And I'm, 17, 18 years old, walking around with this gray vest, thinking I'm a tough guy. Like, look at me, gray vest.
I bet you were, man.
Yeah, it was hilarious. But I mean, I had a lot of great opportunities to learn things and grow that knowledge. And honestly, that landed me at National City.
Yeah.
Having people like I was working a help desk. I was really that person. What's your login? How can I reset your password? And then the network team was right beside me. We were all in this big knock in the middle of a data center, not in a room. We were in the
Hmm.
physical middle of a data center. So you get to talk to them, and then they're like, "Hey, you want to come in at 7 a.m.? We'll show you some stuff." So yeah, I'll come in at 7 a.m. Shift
Hell yeah.
starts at 9. I'll come there early. And it was a lot of that, right? So it was a
You know,
good time to learn.
yeah, it sure was. Those were, I agree with you, man. Those were really, really fun times. I bet we'd be surprised if we could see all the folks in the tech community that didn't start out in tech, but
Yeah.
through a series, either luck or just being drawn into IT out of necessity because they had some need at the job that they were working at, and
Yep.
they found out that they had an aptitude for it. And to your point, that you said earlier, the importance of community and having folks around you and being encouraged by others and so forth. I'm curious. So when you think back on your career and getting to where you're at today, are there any valuable lessons? The way I sort of think of it is we're going through our life's journey, our professional life journey and personal. Yeah, we learn lessons the hard way. You generally
Yeah.
learn lessons out of hardship, and struggles and failure. But those lessons are the most powerful ones. I'm curious how you've taken your own personal lessons that have taken you where you are today, and if you have any practices that you've instilled into your professional day to day that you might talk about.
Yeah, I think so this will sound cheesy. It all started with my dad. Again, being a cop,
Heck yeah.
there is the law, right? Everybody knows what the law is, but then there is what that person is going through. You have to have some kind of empathy for what they're going through and understand at least their perspective. You don't have to agree with it, but you have to understand their perspective. Where are they coming from? What's in their environment that's making them do what they're doing? And I took that learning as I grew up, and that's, between the roles that I've been at, again, engineering roles, sales roles, infrastructure roles, now development roles, you learn from the perspectives of the people that you work with. And then as you come into leadership, the one thing I think it helps me level set when somebody's coming at me at a different angle and we're not quite seeing eye to eye on something. I can stop and go, okay, extract myself from my space and my perspective. What is their perspective? How did they get to where they're at? Why are we having the conversation in this way? And then use that to kind of find a middle ground, figure out where we can work together and figure out how we can move forward. That has been critical for me, especially as I transition to different types of roles in the IT industry and transition to different technologies that they've taken hold. Understanding people's, they may embrace a technology, and especially now, right? You have a subset of people embracing this new wave of technology, and you have a subset of people that fear it. And you're always going to have stuff like that. And being able to stop, talk to them about different perspectives and different ways that you can look at this, I think helps you. And if anything, it helps you not only keep yourself grounded, but then it helps you build a network of people that know, I can talk to that person and we don't have to agree all the time and we don't have to have the same views, but we can actually have a conversation. That's helpful to me as a leader. And I think that's how I grew it into the team, is having people around me that also had that same perspective.
What a cool story, man. I never would have guessed that out of, your father being in law enforcement, the lesson that you learned from him was the concept of empathy, which I mean that's really remarkable. And not to say that I can't imagine what it must be like to be a law enforcement officer without having empathy,
Right.
and talk about just a fruitful ground for you to plant those roots that I imagine are today, like the roots of an oak tree. Now, I have to imagine that empathy is a big part of your leadership style. Would you say that empathy and being an empathetic leader, being able to listen to others, is one of the factors that has driven your success into becoming a leader at Path Robotics and being the leader that you are today?
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, it is, in all honesty, in my core, it is what I look for in the people that I network with. It's what I look for in a leadership team that I need support from. And it's what I hope I give to the people that I work with around me. I mean, it is because when times get tough, you need that, right? It's easy to high five each other when everything goes good, but when times get tough, you need to have that. You need to buckle down, whatever that situation might be. It might be an outage. It might be a tough round of layoffs. It might be, talking about the direction of a company. It might be that you just don't agree with the position that you're in right now. You got to have that network that you can trust and talk with and be open. So that's a
Yeah,
big thing for me.
I agree. Are there any stories that come to mind that sort of emphasize or maybe would help folks to see how having that skill got you through a leadership challenge, or on the flip side, maybe helped you to propel somebody to get to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk. Since we like to talk sometimes about the different forms of tech, and especially now with the news and the media, LinkedIn, you always hear about layoffs, right? You always hear about big tech and big tech layoffs. I was part of that. So I spent several years at VMware. Loved VMware. It was a great company to work for. I had a team. We had the most successful year we had ever had from a pre-sales engineering. We were nailing it. Everything was going fantastic. The problem was that the role was kind of so we were architects, and it was kind of what the engineering teams were evolving to. We were all kind of going down this journey. And so even though we had an amazing year, we got to the end of the year and I got notification after my team got notification that we had all been let go. And it wasn't anything personal, and it wasn't our performance even. It was the company has decided to structure themselves differently. And part of that is listening to the leadership team, not being angry that you're getting let go. Listen to the leadership team about why the company is going in the direction that they're going in, having to come up with your resolve. Do you want to continue to figure out with this company? Because we had to go apply for new jobs. They weren't just given to you. And then I had to go and call my team, and I had about 8 people that were going through this exact same thing, and give them the space to get to a good point, which thankfully they all did. We got through our moment. We got ourselves grounded. I'm happy to say that almost everybody stayed at VMware at the time, including myself. We all took the time to find new roles, to reach to our network. I had one gentleman who left the company, decided it was a good time to go look for something else, did a journey for a couple years at IBM, and then actually came back. But that's a great example of, you could take that scenario of, we just had the best year of our life. Like, everybody did amazing. Everybody made a ton of money, and then you all got laid off. Why? What the heck? And be angry. And we weren't. Being able to tell them and process and understand what they were going through, and help them understand what leadership had to go through to make that decision. It wasn't because of you. It was a business decision, and this is why. And then get everybody to rally back up. That was a big thing for me. I will say, that took a lot of growth for me to make sure I kept myself collective. I have a family. I had kids that were getting ready to either graduate high school or in college. And, so you have to keep yourself grounded. And that was a great example of using your network, keep yourself in check, and then help others.
I guess the way I think of it is, you say staying grounded. There's a lot to be said, and it really takes resilience. It takes strength to not worry and not let yourself be distracted by the things that you can't change, and only focusing on the things that you have control over, that you can change. In this particular instance, you're right. Nothing you could do about the fact that they were downsizing and these jobs were eliminated. Right. So, and coupling that with, your ability to empathize. I mean, the folks that were under you were really lucky to have you there, man. So that's really amazing. Talking about rising to the challenge, man.
It wasn't an experience that I necessarily would wish on anybody, but having gone through it, I still to this day, when I say to this day, I mean a couple hours ago, still talk to the whole team, everybody that was on my team. When we talk, we chat, we're on the phone together today, after hours, seeing how everybody's doing. And so it was that kind of bond, coming out of this. The other lesson that I learned was in a session with listening to Condoleezza Rice. And I can remember sitting there as a young leader, and she said, you can't control what people say and do to you. You can only control how you react. And that just level set me, because, when you're young and you're going at it hard, especially I felt like I had to prove myself everywhere. You gotta watch yourself there. You can get a little bit of an ego, and you can get a little bit of a attitude when things don't go right. And, young Matt was not as calm as old Matt today. So those type of events helped keep me grounded, kind of, again, put things in perspective, helped me to, find everybody's why for most part, help them figure out where they need to go. And I'm hopeful that I've influenced people along the way, as people have influenced me along the way in a positive manner. And that's all I can ask for.
Yeah, that's excellent. And you mentioned, the idea that we grow and our leadership matures, our ability to lead, our emotional bandwidth, and all the experience that we have, that it shapes us as leaders. And so, of course, our leadership style is going to change over time. I'm curious, have you ever been in a situation where, you had to adapt your leadership style to meet the challenges of a unique situation? One thing that I have found, at least in my experience, is that oftentimes, my go-to leadership style, being empathetic, listening, whatever it is, may not be the right thing for a particular circumstance or a particular problem. Sometimes it calls for a change in style. Have you had to experience that yourself in the past?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you look at uh, all of the events that you go through in your life. And again, similar. I try to be empathetic. I try to be extremely transparent. Making sure that everybody can come to me and we can have those talks. But there have been times where it's like, listen, we're getting a little too soft here. We need to actually focus down and get things done. And I I don't need you to always understand everything. Sometimes I just need you to even just disagree and commit. There's a world where that has to happen sometimes, and
Yeah.
we just need to go. And I had that, even recently. We had a series of projects we were working on, and not everybody was in the boat. And it's okay. You don't have to always be in the boat initially, but especially where I'm at now, it's a very small company, so you can say your piece. We can make sure that we walk through all the scenarios, but if we know this is really for the customer, we're doing this for the right reason, I need you to commit. And there were some tough conversations that we had to then buckle down on why aren't you committing, and how can we get you to commit? And then, sometimes you have to have that tough conversation of, if you can't commit, this might not be the right time. This might not be the right role. And I will happily help you find your next, whatever that is, whether it's inside or outside.
Yeah.
But then that's when the you kind of lock it down, and you have to keep the narrow. I had that just recently. I had that during COVID. I had a gentleman. He was going through a lot during COVID. Between, he was out in Oregon. There was a lot of events in Oregon going on around him. He wasn't feeling safe as a person. He wasn't feeling safe with his family. He didn't know what was going on. And prior to it, he wasn't very good at his job, and he wasn't able to come to grips with it. And so I'd have a very stern and tough conversation, almost like, they talk the dad moment. Lower the voice, let's walk through this. And said, somebody hasn't been honest with you in the past about your role here, and, the expectations that you need to hit. And I'm going to be honest with you, and I want you to make sure that you hear it. I'll let you give whatever kind of feedback you want, but then we're going to have to start a performance process.
Mm-hmm.
And that was tough, because then you got to keep focused and you got to be purposeful, because you're not only doing this to protect them, but you're doing it to protect yourself and the company that you represent, because you want to go through the process in the right way. And that requires a different form of leadership than the, hey guys, let's all start a new project leader.
Yeah, Mr. Empathy. So I got to tell you, man, I personally would not want to be on the receiving end of you having your dad moment, being, and I would imagine perhaps, there's the other side, and you probably got this from your father as well, being in law enforcement, the ability to flip that switch. And now it's time to have a tough conversation,
Right.
I guess what I'm hearing from you is, hey, look, there's a time and a place for conversation, and, challenge the idea. But at the end of the day, when there's a decision to be made and the decision is made, I expect you to be on board. When we walk out of this room, we're one team, and you're going to be our number one champion. And if you can't do that, to your point, that's where we're going to have a problem, because at the end of the day, the most important thing is that we're together on this as a team. Even if you may disagree on the what or the how, here's the why. And so, yeah, man,
and that's the biggest thing is trying to help people figure out that why, because that'll get you through all the tough times, right?
I hear you.
When you're grinding on this project that I'm working on isn't the project that everybody else is getting called out for and accolades. I'm grinding at this thing. Yeah. If you know your why, that is a huge thing.
Yeah, man. Have you ever read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why? And the Golden Circle and everything? Yeah, it's pretty amazing, man. I would agree with you. Anybody that's listening, if you've never read Simon Sinek, Start With Why, or Leaders Eat Last, strongly recommend you. Yeah.
That's a great one. That is a great one. And it's hard, in honesty, when everybody says these things, and then when you get challenged with what is your why, and then you try to respond, I guarantee you, everybody out there, your first response is not going to be correct. You're going to think it is, and then you're going to get asked that why like 4 more times, and then you're going to figure out what the actual why is.
Well said, man. And you know what? You wouldn't be saying that if you didn't know that from experience.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So speaking of like going through, challenging times and so forth, we all go through challenging times. I mean, our industry faces challenging times. Businesses, obviously, as you mentioned, we face challenging. We personally face challenging times. Everybody's
Yeah.
going through their own things. I'm curious, what kind of approaches do you take to maintain that motivation and that in yourself and in your team when the when tough times get here and so forth?
Yeah, I think part of it is you naturally. Everybody talks about having a growth mindset, right? It's been a buzz for a while now,
Yeah.
but you really have it or you don't. I really honestly believe that. Like you want to change and grow and learn and challenge yourself and have others challenge you, or you just want to ride it out and kind of get into a mode. And IT, I think a lot of us in the tech world we're here because we like to get challenged. We know whatever you're doing right now isn't going to be the same thing a couple years from now. Somebody's going to disrupt it somehow. And there has to be a part of you that likes to be that change agent, that likes to get disrupted, that doesn't like to be comfortable. And that's a big thing for me. I don't like being comfortable, almost to a fault. I'm sure if I look over the monitor, I can hear some snickering probably from my wife. There are sometimes I don't relax very well. She could sit on
Hey,
a beach and read a book. Not this
yeah,
guy.
man. That's awesome. Have you ever seen, do you know Jocko Willink? Have you ever heard of, yeah, you know him in Navy SEAL, wrote Extreme
Yep.
Ownership. Have you ever seen his video Good
Uh-uh.
on YouTube? Oh man, you would
Is
love
that
it.
I'll have to
It
put
would
that one in.
resonate with you. And his whole premise is when something bad happens, the one word that you say is good. Good.
Yeah.
Why? Because something good is going to come out of this. We're going to be able to grow. We're going to be able to learn. We're going to be able to test our resilience. It's amazing, man. It's really well produced. It's like 2.5 minutes. Oh man, I've probably watched that video 1,000 times, man.
Oh, that's going to go on the list because that's
Just
kind of
do a
it.
search on YouTube, Jocko Willink, good,
There we
and
go.
I promise it'll resonate with you, man.
We had something like that. So we had a company, Afterburner, who helped us out at VMware, and it was really interesting. They had this process where they had these red team reviews.
Yeah,
So you would
I've
go
been
in,
through the Afterburner
you know
program,
this,
man. They're
right?
awesome. Air
I
Force,
love
yeah,
the feedback where all you can do is say thank you.
hell yeah, man. I love
So
it too.
somebody's going to give you this wild idea. Have you
Yeah,
considered? And all you can say is thank you. You want to
yeah,
humble, especially sales teams. You want to humble a salesperson to say thank you.
yeah,
Don't
yeah,
try to
man.
solve the problem. Don't try to come up with anything. Just thank you.
And so have you implemented that red team process at Path?
Everywhere I go,
That's
everywhere I
awesome,
go.
man.
Yeah,
That is
between
so
so
cool,
we had
man.
Thor and Gomez taught us years ago. I
Hell yeah.
love it. I love it. Yep.
That is really cool. So, going back to, we've been talking about tough times and professional life and so forth. I'm curious, like when you think about work-life harmony and, you sounds like you got your wife there that is probably
Oh,
listening in and so forth. There's obviously, especially after the pandemic, the lines between work and life have become super, super blurred, And so I'm just curious, how do you balance your professional responsibilities with your personal interests and your well-being?
yeah. That's a great thing. I'll go back before the pandemic even because being the Windows engineer or the Linux engineer, I spent nights on call and weekends on call and all of that. I had one, and bear with me because I might tear up a little. It still hits me, emotional thing. I can remember when my daughter was younger, so she's 23 now. When she was younger, um, she was going to be in a homecoming parade. So she was in a dance team. They're going to do a homecoming parade. I live in Marysville, Ohio. It's a beautiful little town. They get really hyped up on homecoming. She's going to be in it. This is going to be awesome. I get called, and it's an outage, and it's a big one. And so I'm here. My
Ouch.
wife is working second shift at Chase. I'm here with two kids by myself, and I have to tell my daughter, who her that's her whole life right now, is going to this parade.
Yeah.
We can't go. Dad can't leave.
And she can't
And
go either.
She can't go.
It's not like somebody else can take her.
I had no
Mm,
facility to stop and pause, and that was my grounding moment, because I look back on it, and she cried, and she called me a bad dad, and it was rough, and it was my grounding moment of like, did I handle that right?
mm,
Could I have stopped for a second and just said, this outage is going to last one more minute. Let me call somebody, right? Or
mm.
could I have said, hey, maybe call a secondary or do something? And that was my absolute grounding moment. And I said, from now on, I'm going to make sure that the family gets priorities. We know that there's going to be some exceptions that pop up, but I got to make sure that my family's happy, because at the end of the day, they're always here for me, right?
Yeah.
Jobs will change, responsibilities will change, the family will always be there. Now, ironically, I tell my daughter about the story, and she's like, "Yeah, I know. I kind of remember that. I don't." I'm like, at the time, I was evil. You didn't want anywhere near me. But I
Yeah.
used that, and I actually talk to people about that, because as I've matured, as life has moved on. There's so many different forms of being able to learn and do work. Like, we do everything in the cloud now. When I was
Yeah.
go back to 99, I could bring a data center home if I wanted to, but there was no way of just always being connected. Now you're always connected. So I caution people, there's a fine line between wanting to learn and wanting to grow, and making sure that you take time to step away, because sometimes your biggest growth is when you're not in the moment. You step out of the moment and you think about things that you're doing. So
Yeah.
enjoy your PTO,
Hell
enjoy
yeah.
the time with your family. Go be
Yeah.
a coach or a parent, or go enjoy your own personal thing. Whether you want to do, I have friends that do theater as their, that's their thing. I used to do theater when I was in high school. They still do it, kind of semi-professionally, I guess you want to call it. But that's their stress relief. You have to have that balance. You have to understand that. And the problem is, you won't know until it's too late that you
Hmm.
tipped over that mark.
Yeah.
It
Well
will be
said.
an event that tips you, right?
That's right. I would imagine there's not a single dad or a single mom that don't resonate on exactly what you're saying. I know it resonates with me.
Yeah.
I've had very, very similar experiences. It kind of goes back to what we were saying about good. I mean, the good thing about the fact that you had that experience was you recognized it. You saw it as a personal failure.
Yeah.
And because of that, you're now a more engaged father. You're a more engaged husband, and you've been able to share that with others as well. We're sort of lucky. I mean, obviously we talk about, and it's easy to talk down about, how, the lines between professional life and personal life are becoming blurry and so forth. But the positive side of that, I guess it's debatable, philosophically debatable. The positive side of that is, to your point, technology has and innovation has adapted, and we've been able now to your point, if something like that does happen, we can I can get right on my phone and be connected, and do the work that I need to do, or get people on the phone
Right.
to get that work done. So we're much more connected, for better or for worse, because of those technologies.
Yeah.
So
And it's being thankful for that, right? I mean,
yeah,
as much as I may think that there's a moment that's happening that is so impactful to me at that moment, there are some people that don't get that kind of luxury. They don't get the opportunity to work from home. They don't
true.
get the opportunity to connect or disconnect, because they maybe are working two jobs to keep moving and keep the family going. So there's so many people that's a harder struggle than it is for me. That when I can, it's trying to keep everybody around me grounded. Like, hey, talk to your network, reach out to your friends and family. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to level set on what's important to you and focus on that.
Yeah, very, very well said, man. So now that we're talking about, kind of how technology is advancing and so forth, we've got all these technologies, cloud, virtualization, all these artificial intelligence, you name it.
Yeah.
Um, what emerging technologies, this is kind of a segue here. It's kind of a going from, this very, impactful, personal, and wonderful story to, okay, let's talk tech.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious. So what emerging technologies do you see having the most significant impact on your industry in the next 5 to 10 years? And the one thing I'll say, just for the audience that we didn't really mention earlier, is that you work at Path Robotics. Path Robotics, we were talking earlier, is a manufacturing company that uses artificial intelligence for precision welding, right?
Right. Yep.
And your job, the first thing I should say, I want to make sure that I get this out there, is that we were talking about, how, you're in charge of the operating system for the robots.
Yep. From the
So
front end
if there's
interaction, all of
anybody to
it.
talk to about emerging tech, you're the guy.
Right. Yeah. My job
That's
is
the
to keep.
coolest.
I always have it's interesting because, especially now that I work at a robotics company, you get the people that they don't quite understand what that means yet. And you get the people that are like, hey, when they do come to take us all, could you please put in a good word for me type deal? So, and so there's so many disruptors, especially in the robotics industry right now.
Yeah.
Take the way that we learn and the way that we've had, like the past couple of years have been about data, right? Data has been the gold mine. We kind of say that data is the universe, and the gravity of data is where apps will follow the data, and it follows it to cloud and all these scales, and it's true. Now we're in a new era where we have these large language models. We've got these different ways of learning that now we can start to feed data in a little bit more raw, so we can understand what's going on, and then we have to figure out, is that the right thing to do? Do you want to put all your raw data in there and let some other model take apart your data, consume it, build opinions on it, and then use it to train something else? Do you want to do it yourself where you control it? Do you want to augment it? That's a huge thing for us. And especially combine that with, again, robotics, because you see like the robots that we build at Path, they are truly autonomous robots. So, for example, it takes a lot for a traditional welding robot. There was a lot of programming and a lot of pendant work. Go here, go here, go here, go here. And it just does the points you say. Our robots you can upload a drawing to CAD, for example. It'll see, hey, I know what you're looking at, and annotate some parts. And then it goes in, and part of our special sauce at Path is the AI that we have. Truly, we build these point clouds. We make these 3D models of what you said the part was. And then we say, oh, here's what it really is. And here's what it really looks like. And here it might be off by a little bit. And then when we go to weld, it's a very precise weld, because we know exactly what it really is in real life.
And when you
And the
say
robot does it.
when you say what it really is, is that because you're using like high definition cameras and
Yep.
and the
Cameras
and
and
the
lasers and
and the
sensors.
robot is actually able to see what it is? Because to your point, if you're looking at a diagram, that's just a representation of what it should be or how you designed it.
Correct.
What you're
Correct.
looking at is the real McCoy. You're looking at the real thing, and
Yep.
and it's acting based on the real thing in 3-dimensional space.
Right. It is learning what
That's
it really
amazing.
is. And even
That's
as it welds, because there are some things where we have to lay down multiple welds. And so it's learning like, oh, this weld went down like this. So the next weld needs to be a little bit different than what we thought before.
How does
So
it
there's a
know
lot
that?
to
But how does it know that? Like, how does it know like the quality of the welds and things like that? Does a human have to? With artificial intelligence solutions, and in particular with Gen AI, you hear about
Yeah.
this human in the loop concept. Do you have
Yep.
something similar at Path where you have to have some human there to make sure that the outcome is actually what is intended, or is that also automated?
Yeah, so the human can, so with welding, there's weld parameters and programs that you use based on, this is the type of metal, this is the type of wire that I'm using. And so there are some pieces that we will put in from a human perspective into the weld programs and lay it all out. There's also the industries that we work with, they're sometimes very, very specific on how to weld. So even though we may find a solution that says, hey, the fastest way of welding it is by going A to Z, they may say, actually, that's fine, but my industry requires me to do kind of like the traveling salesman method. I go up and down, not around the block. So there is some human intervention that we can add in there, but a lot of
Hmm.
times it is the robot truly looking at the part, learning where it is, and it's more about fitment, right? You said that you had this much of a root gap, you really had a little bit more here, a little less there, and then
Wow.
it really goes through a learning process, and it really does an output. Um, and again, take that to a larger robotics term. So you have people learning about AI. They see things in the social media. They see things on the news about, are there, fakes out there? So am I really talking, or is this just a fake model talking right now? Trust me, nobody's making a fake of this, Mr. Potato Head.
Same.
Um, or you see the robots are out there and they're going to take your jobs. Well, they're
Hmm.
in our industry, for example, you can't find enough actual human welders. So we're not trying to displace welders, we're trying to fill a gap. There's
Got
not
it.
enough people in the industry right now to keep pace with what we're doing, and that's a big thing for us, to make sure that we are filling a need, not necessarily
But
replacing
can
people.
so that's interesting. So can a robot, can it replace, like, obviously you've got welders, like these trades, whether it's welding or
Yeah,
carpentry, you know, the human touch that goes into these trades is really unmatched and unparalleled.
it's
And
hard precisions, right?
but can AI, is AI and the tools, the precision tools you use, are they good enough to match like a master welder? Or are there times where it just makes sense based on the precision and the complexity of this, the piece that you're trying to weld, that, it would just make sense to have a human do it? Like, what's
Yeah, and
that? Yeah.
there are. I mean, in our cases, we have, because welding is so precise. It's not
Hmm.
like spray painting, right? I mean, you have to get it right, and I mean
I believe
right.
it. Yeah.
So there are a lot of things that we work with weld engineers, we work with weld teams and humans, and so
Hmm.
when we classify things that we can do, we're very specific about what we can and what we can't do. And
Got
that's
it.
why it's not always about replacing the human. It's about
Hmm.
taking the mundane ones that they do and giving them better purpose, so the humans can go do the harder work, the ones that are way more precise that we just can't get into quite yet, because the robot only has so many degrees that it can move, right? And the human can
But you
probably
said
put a
quite
little
yet.
more. Yeah.
So I
Well,
imagine that gap
it's
is going to
evolving, right?
continue, going to
It's
continue to
gonna,
shrink.
and everything's gonna get that
Yeah,
way. And that's one of those
I
things
agree.
where, again, if you look at what we consider AI right now, if you look at what we consider um, robots for a purpose, those type of things, that this is going to be an interesting world in the next 5 to 10 years. There's all these races going on with companies, with countries, even to
Hmm.
come up with the thing. And sometimes when you do this, it's almost like going back to the internet era. You're not quite sure what you're running towards yet. You just want to try to get something. So
Well,
app is very
I think if you were to ask the powers that be, or the folks, the media and other folks, they would say that we're heading towards AGI. Like, that's really the
yeah.
goal. The goal is to achieve artificial general intelligence, which, who knows how far we are away from that. But it really is a fascinating kind of a topic. I am
It,
curious. So earlier you said, that at Path, not only are you the director of software engineering, you're also the director of infrastructure, and you're also the director of platform engineering. You got all of these hats that you wear. I'm curious a lot. When it comes to, like you were saying earlier about building these models, do you manage the building of these models? Like, does Path build these custom models themselves?
Yeah, Path has some models that we are definitely responsible for. We have other engineering teams that are focused truly on building the next, whether we want to incorporate an LLM into what we're doing, whether we want to build our own neural network that we're using, because we have a lot of proprietary algorithms that we use and try to figure things out. So we have teams, like I have my team, the software engineers on my team, like I said, are kind of the operating system, the middleware, the front end UI. We have another smaller software team that is really about making sure that it's adaptive. So, understanding how this works and how the welds adapt. We have a team around sensors. So how do the cameras work and the lasers work, and how do you feed that data in? So
Wow.
we have an amazing, for Path only being about 160, 170 people, we have some amazing talent and teams that, again, going back to our earlier conversation, you got to know your why. This is what
Hmm.
we're all working towards. And being able to work towards that one goal, right, is where we're at. That's the big thing for us.
Yeah, I hear you, man. And I mean, right here in the heart of the Silicon Heartland, right here
Yeah.
so Path is based. I've been there before. I'm trying to remember. It's in Dublin, right? Am I right?
Columbus, right off
Oh,
of
it's in
like Wilson
Columbus. Yeah,
Road. Yep. Yep.
yeah. That's an amazing facility. I was blown away.
Yeah, it was mind blowing for me because, again, I've done a lot of software companies, Google,
Hmm.
VMware, IBM, and it's been great. And you meet a lot of customers and you learn a lot of things with them. But then when you go to this company and you see somebody banging away at code, and then you see this robot move, grab a part, pick it up, place it, weld it, that's cool. Because then now there's a tangible piece to this. Like, look,
Hell yeah.
we made this. So
Agree. That's got to feel amazing, man. To be able to
yeah.
hold it in your hand, or I don't know if they're big, if they're too big to hold in your hand, but be able to look, to touch it and go and to feel the weld and everything and see the quality of it. That's got to be just amazing, man. So
Yeah, we
speaking,
had
so yeah.
we had so the one program that we have is called AF1. So it's a fit up robot. It'll bin pick and figure out how to put the thing together and weld it. Like we made we have Fab Tech, which is a big conference that we go to. We made these like holders. So you had an iPhone holder. It was like 5 pieces. We assembled it, and you could take it home with you. It was kind of cool. But then we do huge trailer chassis and truck chassis and augers and utility poles that are just huge, right? So
So
yeah, it's fun to see all those
so
different
what's
things.
what's Christmas like in the Randall household? Is Santa Claus bring all of these things that are, like, here's a welded Rubik's cube?
Yeah, that's our running joke because my household in
Oh my God.
particular, we are very heavy Jeep oriented people. So it's like, hey, maybe we could weld up a bumper or a new
Oh hell
control arm
yeah,
or something,
man.
right?
Yeah,
So,
there's a whole Jeep culture around, adding add-ons and everything to your Jeep and stuff like
oh
that. That's
yes,
a cool idea, man. Maybe that
yeah.
could be like the second part of what Path Robotics does, creating,
So that's the
cool
running
add-ons
joke
for
with
your
the
Jeeps. Hell yeah.
with my CTO Alex was one day I'm going to bring. I have a 1999 Jeep that needs some work, and
Yeah.
one day I'm going to make the robot disassemble it, weld some new plates in, and then put it back together.
Yes. Oh hell yeah. That's really funny. So speaking of all of this, all of AI, all these technology advancements and so forth, as well as all the fears and so forth around AI, I'm just curious, in what ways do you believe technology can be leveraged to address social issues that you're passionate about? And does artificial intelligence play a role there?
Yeah, I'll go back to start this conversation with um, VMware and Pat Gelsinger, and I can remember him being on stage in front of all of us and saying, technology as a force for good, right? And that resonated with me. We hear in social media and everything all these opportunities where technology can get us in trouble, and I think we're seeing it as a generation that is starting to come in and really getting inundated with social media. You see this all the time, right? Things will trend one way or the other, and it just takes two people saying it and five people buy into it. And so I think we as technologists, we have an obligation to make sure that the technology truly is a force for good. It's trying to keep everybody together. It's trying to level set playing fields, right? So there's equity and equality for me. That's a big thing. So
Hmm.
if I can use technology to give somebody opportunities that I also have, I think that's fantastic. And
Yeah.
as a society, I think we have to start putting ourselves on that plane. It shouldn't always be about, let me be the best of the best of the best. It should be, how can I bring people up with me? And then all of us step up one more time together and start to raise everybody up. And I hope that, what we do on an individual level, what hopefully the society that we live in does, is actually take a step and look at that and say, what do we do to kind of level the playing field to make it easier on whoever it is? It could be the single mom out there. It could be somebody from a country that's not as quite as advanced as ours. How can we do things to really truly help us and help bring everybody up a notch? That's my
That's a
big thing there.
that's a great point. I do wonder. I mean, it sort of sparks in my mind the art of the possible in terms of, especially with AI and generative AI,
Yeah.
because the way I see it is that the very building blocks, the tools that we use on a regular basis are rapidly changing themselves. So, to your point, in terms of access to technology and equity, used to be that if you wanted to, for example, go create a website or something for your nonprofit or for your church or for your organization or whatever, you had to have those skills, or you had to go find somebody who had those skills.
Right.
And artificial intelligence, to your point, has the potential to really level the playing field. I no longer have to have those skills.
Right.
I mean, you still have to have those skills to a certain extent. I mean, you have to understand how to, you have to understand something about the technology and how it works and so forth. But all those things are discoverable by just going into ChatGPT. It'll write the code for you. You can ask it about it. You can give it narrative. It'll even do the images for you and even build a whole website for you. So I agree with you. Those are really fascinating. There's really fascinating times. This kind of goes back to, we were talking earlier about back in the 90s, how fun it was back then, and how, we couldn't have imagined, I couldn't at least imagine how the internet back then, which was pretty darn new, especially from a business perspective, couldn't have imagined how it would shape the world. And social media, had no thought about what the heck anything like that was, or smartphones, all the things that, that were a part of that journey, starting back in the 90s into the early 2000s and so forth. And now it feels like we're on this next wave.
Right.
We're riding this next wave, and it's that feeling of discomfort and, I don't want to use the word fear. It's almost like exhilaration, is there, and I find myself, being really excited to have conversations like this, like with you, experts who are doing this on a day-by-day basis and learning more about these technologies and sort of seeing the art of the possible.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of our thing, right? Like we at Path talk about, getting the robots to do so that humans can create.
There you go.
That is a big thing for us. Like that's where we want to be. We want to,
Yeah.
if I can get you out of the day-to-day task that you just do because you have to do, and I can give you the freedom to create and to think and to level up, then that's everything to us, right? That's why we exist. That's what we're trying to do. And that's, again, I think you could take a look at the amount of data that we have around us today, the amount of connectivity that we have as a society, and you can look at it in a couple different ways. And one of the things that was explained to me a long time ago was, this is going to, from a society standpoint, you're going to see the people that, and it's not a right or wrong thing, they want to protect their beliefs and their cultures and their traditions, but then they also want to embrace what's around them. And this will be an interesting world that we live in over the next couple of years, where you're going to have some cultures that want to lock in and they don't want to change and they want to be like how it always has been. And you're going to have some people that want to change and grow and experience different things. And you could argue that we've done this forever. You could travel to Europe if you want. You could fly to places, but you had to go there. And now it's at your fingertips, and it's going to continue to be at your fingertips. AI, all these models that we're looking at are going to be more of a global fed thing. Mm-hmm. So you're going to get different perspectives. You're going to get different viewpoints, and you're going to have to really ground yourself in your values and your beliefs and understand, how is this helping? And are you doing the right thing? And are you trying to help? So, and I think that's going to be an interesting thing for us as Earth, trying to figure out as we go forward.
Yeah, no kidding, man. So there's one more topic that I kind of wanted to, and we've talked a bit about it. I'm really interested to talk about sort of that intersection between security and data, the importance of data.
Yeah.
I tend to, I tend to take the approach, just my, you can correct me, but I see artificial intelligence, just like any other technology from a data perspective, garbage in, garbage out. If you have bad data that comes into an AI, whether it's training a model or it comes in as a prompt or whatever, then what's going to come
Right.
out of it, regardless of how smart that AI is still going to be beholden to that data set and that bad data and so forth. And to your point around, these technologies being used for good, there are real concerns around things like data privacy and, these models being trained with, personal identifiable information and protected information and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just curious as to, how does Path Robotics and how do you go about protecting user data? And is that something that you're focused on?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and especially at a smaller company. So Path Robotics is a startup, right? I mean, we're not a huge company. We don't have a thick organization. So security is top of mind to everybody there. There isn't a CISO necessarily. We've talked with experts to help us out, to guide us. We've had people come in and do some consulting with us, but it has to be top of mind to everybody. And I think if we learn anything, as technologists, as we've all evolved and grown up in technology, we obviously have security groups. Remember back in the day, it was like, oh, there's that security person that's going to stop me from doing something. Um,
Productivity is gonna just die and
yeah,
take a
it's going to hit the
nosedive.
floor, right? Oh, I got it all designed, and then there's this guy looking over the wall going, ah, ah, ah. Yeah. But I mean,
That's
the
great.
reality is we've all learned for different reasons or experiences about security. And so everybody has to have a security mindset, whether you're the person touching the data, whether you're the person enabling the data to be moved, whether you're the person training on looking at new software and new technologies. And so it's important to have not only a security organization, but to have everybody on board with security and what's it mean, how does it help, and how does it protect your brand, for your companies and the people that you service. You have to have that mindset. If you don't, it's so easy right now to just accidentally overlook it. Not even on a being a bad actor or anything like that. You could have great intentions. I'm just going to enable this one cool little bot in Slack. No big deal. And then all of a sudden, boom, there goes your data, right?
Really? Yeah. No
And
kidding, man.
so it's really about being, transparent with what we're doing as an organization, as a company, kind of going through your basic level sets of, do you understand what kind of classifications of data? Do you understand ramifications of that? And even with AI and ML, to your point, do you understand if you give it that garbage data, you're going to make things so much worse faster now, right? That the scale to get to bad has escalated, just like the scale to get to good has escalated. So get ready.
That is such an interesting point. I hadn't even thought about it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, Matt, you're a fascinating dude, man. This is it's been a really
Thank you.
cool conversation. I really appreciate the time. So just in closing, I'm just curious. There are so many people in this community that would aspire to walk in your footsteps. Is there any closing advice or anything that you have for the community, for folks who do aspire to walk in your footsteps?
Yeah, for me, like we kind of said as we started in the intros, I have been very blessed to have a lot of good people in my network, in the jobs that I've been at, that have all been in a great mindset. Focus on continual growth. Focus on, you know, being humble where you need to be. Work with your network. Understand perspectives, and that will always help you in good times and in times of need. The more that you work with and you work alongside of people, the better. If you go out there and you have this mindset that I am just the best of this, you're shutting yourself off to other experiences and
Yeah.
others' perspectives and things that, with technology, I think we can all agree it's very very few and far between that there's just one way of doing things, right? There's always different ways of doing things in technology, and it always
Oh yeah,
changes. And
man.
so build your network, be humble, talk to people, get their perspectives, and then use that to kind of build your experience, and then continue to drive yourself. Be transparent with not only your successes but your failures, because that's where you learn the most, right?
Very true, man. That's very wise advice. So thanks, Matt. Really appreciate it, man.
A lot of battle scars to get to like this, right? So
And when you're bald like the two of us, you can't hide them very well.
you can't hide it. Nope.
There you go, man. All
I
right. Hey,
appreciate
thanks, Matt.
having me on. Thank you.
My
To
pleasure.
anybody that sees this, again, it's been a great experience. Cloud Nirvana has been a great experience, a great networking experience.
Thank you.
I hope, especially given the current growth in the Columbus area, the state of Ohio, that we can just continue to grow this, have this great experience, and make something really great in this heartland.
There you go. You and me both, brother. All right, man. Well, hey, have a great evening.
You too. Appreciate
See
it.
ya. See you, my man.